Well, hello, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. I had a fascinating conversation with my guest today. Her name is Tanya Dalton. She is a best-selling author, speaker, nationally recognized productivity expert, which I love. She is a growth strategist for female leaders, and she just had a book drop last October called The Busy Woman's Guide to an Extraordinary Life of Meaning and Success. And who doesn't want that? Because so much of the time, if you are busy, you think you're too busy to create the life that you really want. It's almost like we're just playing catch up, right? That is the feeling. So today we talked a lot about strategies to basically create your life on purpose. That is the name of the book, is On Purpose. And it was so interesting to hear her entire story from when she started this little teeny business that then became a huge business. And then she started teaching women all about how to do it. We dive into fear. We dive into limiting stories. We dive into perfectionism. So I hope that you enjoy this interview with Tanya Dalton as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. Now on to the episode. I am so excited to welcome Tanya Dalton to the Terri Cole Show. Welcome, Tanya.
Thanks so much for having me.
Super exciting. I was just talking at the top about your brandy new book. But before we get into that, I really want to know what inspired you to do what you do.
Yeah, that's a good question. I like to say really I started my entrepreneurial journey in 2008, which is like forever ago. It's like the Stone Age at this point. With two small kids playing at my feet, I made a decision to start growing a business because my husband's on the other side of the planet, to make a long story short, and he felt like he was missing everything. He's missing the milestones with the kids and all the big things. And I thought, you know what? I have the ability to change our lives. I can totally shift what our lives look like. And I had a business that I had started with $50 that I was selling to friends, maybe friends of friends, but that might be a stretch. No website, none of that. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to grow this business to absorb his MBA income. And then we can have the lifestyle we really want to have on our own terms. And within about a year, I made that happen. And in the course of growing...
So what were you selling, though? Hold on. What were you selling?
Well, it was 2008. So it was before really we all were carrying around phones in our back pockets. I have two small kids, and people would say all the time, if they saw me out, oh, let me see pictures of your kids. And I'd be like, listen, you're lucky I showered. I have no pictures of my children to show you. And so I came up with this idea to take images of the kids and set it into like beautiful pieces of jewelry, rings, bracelets, things like that, so that I would always have pictures of my kids around. And my friends loved it. So then they wanted me to make pieces for them. And so when I made the decision to grow the business, I started working with photography studios, taking their beautiful images, setting it into heirloom quality jewelry. So it's a very random niche, but I was able to grow that company and absorb his MBA income, and he could come work alongside of me. And through the process of growing my business, I started working with other women who were wanting to grow their businesses. And it was really funny because I discovered they weren't doing the things that I was doing, that they weren't using systems and they weren't being productive and in the way of doing the things that were most important. They felt like they were busy all day long, but they weren't really accomplishing things that made them feel good. And so in 2013, I looked at my husband and I said, I love you. I love working with you, but I don't love what we're doing. This whole jewelry business was something I started for $50 on the side, and it wasn't really making the impact I wanted. So when I sat down and really mapped out what am I passionate about, there were three things that I really discovered. I'm passionate about working with women. I love talking with women, helping women. I love it when they get excited about what they get to do. I love teaching. I used to be a teacher, always a teacher. Once a teacher, that's just what you are. And then I love productivity because that's what allowed me to have the lifestyle that I had with the financial freedom, the time freedom, the location freedom, all the freedoms. And so I took those three very unrelated things, and the thread that connected them was Inkwell Press Productivity Co., the company that I founded and started in 2014. And that's really how I became passionate. I really wanted women to start feeling really good. I feel like so many women go to bed at night and their head hits the pillow. They've run around busy all day long, checked 1,000 things off their to-do list. But they fall into bed and they think, oh, I haven't gotten enough done. I haven't done enough, or I should have done this, I should have done that. And I really want women to fall into bed at night and go, today felt amazing. I'm amazing. I do amazing things. So that's really what I'm on a mission to do, to help women really feel confident about how they're spending their time and their days.
There's something so needed, but also so beautiful about just the sense of what I've done today is enough. I'm enough. Because I think that as women and moms and entrepreneurs and all the things that many of us are, we are really set up to feel like failures, even though what we're doing is phenomenal. Like, we are doing more than most people will ever do in their friggin' life in like 2 weeks.
Yes.
And yet somehow the perfectionist, thing gets in there of like, but I wanted to do one more thing, or I wanted, and I think that there's something so beautiful about the notion that we could go to sleep at night. Think about this. Those of you who are listening, wouldn't it feel good to put your head on the pillow and be like, I feel satisfied. I know I'm on my path. And part of this brings me to the book. So tell me a little bit about this particular book, because this is your second book.
Yes.
So this is On Purpose, The Busy Woman's Guide to an Extraordinary Life of Meaning and Success. So this came out last October. So would you tell us a little bit about what inspired it and who is it for?
Yeah, so, well, I really wanted to call out the busy woman in that subtitle. I wanted women who feel like, I have so much going on, there's no way I can really feel successful, or there's no way that I can really feel satisfied. And I wanted women to see that busy woman's guide and go, oh, that's for me, right? Because we have a lot going on. We really do. We do an extraordinary amount of things in our day, and we tend to forget about it, and we don't tend to celebrate ourselves enough. So the book really came about because I had my first book come out October of 2019. It did really well. It was named a top 10 business book of the year. And so HarperCollins reached out and said, we'd love for you to write a second book. And I said, great. What do we want to write about? So we decided, goal setting. People love goal setting. They love the idea of goal setting. So I said, perfect. I can write a goal setting book. I've taught tens of thousands of women how to set and achieve goals. No problem. So I sat down February of 2020, and I mapped out this whole beautiful outline of what I was going to write, and I made a writing plan for myself and all the things, and I thought, I'm going to start writing soon. And then March of 2020 happened, and the whole world went through this giant reset with the pandemic, and suddenly I have 2 children who I'm homeschooling. I'm trying to fill out paperwork for my business, make my team feel okay, still fulfill and ship out the products that people are ordering from us, doing all of those things. And I thought, there's no way I can write the book. I can't write the book right now, and I put it on hold, and it kept getting pushed back. But what was beautiful was this. It was almost like I was given this intentional pause in my schedule, that I really stopped and I started to really pay attention to the conversations I was hearing. And this is a silver lining with the pandemic, I think. We have to look for the silver linings, because otherwise it's really easy to get brought down and to feel angry about it. But the silver lining is this. We don't know what's really important until suddenly it becomes very clear. We don't know what to throw overboard until our ship is sinking. And in March of 2020, everybody's ship was sinking. And suddenly it was like, I don't need to do this and I don't need to do that. And all these things we were throwing out. And we got really clear on what was more important. And people started asking these questions, why have I been doing the things I've been doing? Or what am I here for? What is the point of all of this? And so through that intentional pause, I stopped and I realized, goals are not the goal. Goals are the vehicle to get us to that life we want. It's really about that bigger picture. It's about living on purpose, that double entendre of living with intention, on purpose, but also living towards your purpose, to something so much bigger than today. And I realized I needed to write a book to help women live bigger than their to-do list. And so I had to take that old outline. Boy, that perfectionist in me didn't like ripping that up, but I had to. I mean, all those perfectly laid plans. Oh, but you know what? It's one of those things where this is one of the things I have to talk about in the book too, that plans don't always go the way that we think they're going to go, right? And so I took those plans, threw them away, kind of mapped out what I thought I was going to write, and I let the book really lead me where it needed to go. I mean, from writing your book, books are these really organic things that, we might have the best laid plans, but they become these rabbit trails that we follow. And all of a sudden we get a nudge in our soul of, I need to follow this, and I need to lean more into that. And these things start appearing to us that allows us to dive even deeper. And that's what happened with me with this book, is this book became so much bigger than what I ever anticipated, so much better than if I'd stuck with that original outline. And so that's how we ended up with not a goal setting book. We talk about goal setting in the book, but it's not a goal setting book. It's a book about living your life with intention, living your life so you go to bed and feel that satisfaction every day.
I love it. So, because a lot of us had the universe gave us a collective pause.
Yes.
And so many of my clients and women in my courses and me myself were put in a position to pivot or perish, right? To a degree, like, can we pivot? What does that look like? And I so agree with you, Tanya, all the things that we were like, it could never be like this. I could never do a book tour from this yellow chair. Oh, yes, I could.
Suddenly you can.
And I did.
Yeah.
Like, apparently you can. And I think that it really, it made me question my limiting beliefs.
Yes.
Make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Because you're right. We thought there were all these things that we couldn't do. And suddenly the world was like, oh no, you have to do it this way. You got to do all these things through Zoom or, virtually, or you just have to say no. Things that we thought we couldn't say no to.
Right.
These boundaries,
Yeah.
right? That we thought we could never set. Suddenly it became easier to say, well, and what I loved about that pause for all of us, and really this pause in some ways, in shapes and forms, is still continuing, it allowed us to be perfectly imperfect, to really aggressively embrace imperfection, that suddenly it was okay if you were on a call or a meeting and one of your kids walks through the room. It was no longer one of those things where we had to pretend like we had it all together, because nobody had it all together. What an amazing collective experience that we had. And I think I want women to hold on to that, right? And to remember, we don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to have it perfectly planned. It's okay to figure it
Yes.
out as we go.
Agreed. Okay, so what does it mean, in your words, to live on purpose?
Well, I like to say living on purpose isn't about changing who you are. It's rising up and becoming the best version of you. It's looking out on the horizon and seeing this big, bright, beautiful future that we dream of, and then making steps each and every day, little tiny steps even, not even giant leaps, but just small steps on a daily basis to get to that big, bright, beautiful future. When we do that, that's when we fall into bed and feel satisfied. When we do the work that really fills our soul. The question I pose at the start of the book is, we're filling our calendars, but are we filling our souls? And I think that's really what I want you to feel when you read this book, that you have the tools to be able to fill your soul, to feel fulfilled and feel whole.
I love that so much. One of my girlfriends, Danielle Laporte, used to talk about having goals with soul. And I feel like that is so much of what you're talking about but it requires this slowing down, I think, right? We can't be on automatic pilot and do what you're saying in this book, living on purpose. We can't just be waking up, burning through the day and dropping at night and be creating the lives that we really want. So how can busy women begin to challenge themselves and the way that they think, like this sort of ingrained thought patterns?
I like this question because I think so often we think that we can't stop, that if we stop, we're dying. We're like sharks, right? We have to always be moving. And it really is in the intentional pause that we get so much growth. It's stopping and taking the time to look backwards so that we can decide how we want to move forward, right? How did I do last month? How do I feel? What am I feeling like? Am I stressing myself out? Am I putting so much on my plate? It really comes down to what the universe gave me, that intentional pause, and gifting that to yourself. And the truth is, that's not something that's just going to appear. One of the things I hear from so many women is, I just need more time. And I'm like, listen, you, me, Beyonce, we all got the same 24 hours in a day, right? The same 168 hours in a week. We have to choose how we spend that time. We have to actively say, I want to stop and I want to figure out what it is I want to do. So one of the things that I talk about in the book, and this is the first section of the book, is this idea of reflection, really stopping and taking an intentional pause to basically unpack your backpack. I like to think that we all have this backpack that we wear on our back, and we don't see it because it's on our back, right? But we go through life and we're gathering together these experiences and the knowledge and the expertise and the failures, the lessons we learn and the trauma and what we gain from that, the perspectives, and it all goes into our backpack. But because it's in that backpack, we don't even remember that it's there. And what we can do is we can take that backpack off. We can take it off our shoulders, and you first of all realize, oh my gosh, that was a lot of weight. But we unzip that backpack and we start to lay all those things out and we go, wow, wow, I know a lot more than I thought I did. I have a lot more to me than just however you're identifying yourself right now in this moment, right? We have this whole other rich level of ourselves. And when we do that, we take the shiny trophies and we go, ooh, look how amazing these are. But we also take the things that are a little bit of oozy hurt and we use those as springboards to push us forward. Because truly, I believe that when you know what you don't want, when you look at your past and you go, oh, I would never want to repeat that. We know what we do want. We just push against that. Because I can promise you right now, if I said to your listeners, this is what I'd love for you to do. I would love for you to write down 10 things that you dream about for your future. What are 10 big goals or 10 big dreams? A lot of the listeners would say, oh, 10? Can I come up with 5 or 2? But if I said, write down 10 things that you don't want to repeat, 10 things that you didn't like that happened, they would say, only 10? Can I write down 50? And what's amazing is we can take that 50, push against it to really realize what we want. I didn't like this in my life, so now I know what I do like. So really being intentional with pausing and questioning.
I love the idea of learning from the past. From a therapeutic point of view, I mean, not to be a therapist, but I can't not, that it's so crucial. And I love that this is a part of what you're walking us through in the book, because there's nothing shameful about anything that we've experienced, that we've been through. We're all survivors, right? And that actually adds value to your resiliency, your ability to get things done, all of those things. So I love that we're including them all, not just the shiny bits, but also the yicky bits, because those things together really are what make us who we are and have given us the skill sets that we have. So what can you do, or what are your thoughts about helping the listeners if they have these thought patterns that are not really getting them where they want to go, whether it's negative self-talk, whether it's having limiting beliefs about their potential? What are your ideas about interrupting those patterns?
Yeah, well, the thing with these patterns is they're on repeat. They're like a soundtrack that's just playing over and over again, and we don't recognize that it's even there a lot of times. So what I like to tell people is pay attention to your body. Your body will tell you before anything else does that there's something going on. You'll get that pit in your stomach or a little bit of a stress headache at the back of your neck, or there's some spot in your body that will start to get tense. And when that happens, stop and ask yourself, okay, what are the thoughts that are going through my head? What's the story that's on repeat that's going on in my head? And that's the first step, is really to recognize it. In the book, we walk through a very simple, very easy exercise that I call the 5th why, which is so easy to do. You can do it while you're in the shower. You can do it while you're driving the car or taking the dog for a walk. But essentially what you do is you recognize that thought pattern is there, whatever it is, and you ask yourself why, right? That first why is going to give you a really shallow answer. It's going to be seriously surface level, right? But what we do is we take that why and we ask it again. We ask it a second time, and then we ask why a third time, and then why a 4th time, and then why a 5th time. So we get down deep to the root cause. Now you could ask why 3,000 times. I like to limit it to 5 so we don't get so deep that we're, getting the bends and, going so deep and getting ourselves in a rabbit hole. What we want to do though is we want to get beyond that surface level, because what happens is when we go deeper, I know you talk about this as like getting kind of into our basement, right? We can clear it out and we can start to really recognize this is the truth behind the way that I'm feeling or the way that I'm thinking. And it could be things like, I feel like a failure. All right, why do you feel like a failure? I feel like a failure because I didn't get a promotion at work. Okay, why didn't you get the promotion at work? Well, I didn't get the promotion at work because my boss didn't like that I didn't have my certification. So we've already asked a couple of whys there. Why didn't I get the certification? Because I haven't had time to do it. My day feels too busy. Why does your day feel too busy? Well, each day I feel like I'm rushing here and there and I'm late to work every single day. Why am I late to work? Well, I'm late to work because I'm staying up too late, watching TV shows, or I'm staying up too late doing these things, right? And then we start to realize, oh, it's how I spend my time. Okay, so if I shift that, which is an easy fix, changing our evening routine, we can totally unlock that feeling of, I feel like a failure. So it's really this process of just asking ourselves why 5 times, getting down a little bit deeper, and then we can take that limiting belief and we can pull it up by its roots and really start to work on it.
I love that process because, like you said, it doesn't require any equipment.
No.
It requires your willingness to ask and answer honestly.
With no judgment, right? Yeah, ask
Right.
and answer honestly. You don't even have to answer to anybody else. You can do it to yourself. You don't even have to write it on a sheet of paper. This is something that you can do literally while you're in the shower, while you're shampooing your hair.
You're like, and you can do it every day,
Yeah.
right? You could literally do it every day. You could find something to do it about.
Oh,
pretty much
I've
every
used
day.
this process for so many things. I use it in parenting when my kids feel stuck and they say that they can't do something. We'll use the fifth why. I use it to unlock gratitude even. Because a lot of times with our gratitude, we start really surface level. I'm grateful for John for bringing me lunch today. Why am I grateful for John bringing me lunch? And when I do this exercise, I realize what I'm really grateful for is that John sees value in the work that I do, that he brings me lunch. But I started with, I'm grateful for John bringing me lunch. That really gets me deeper in that relationship and how I feel about John. So the fifth why is one of those things that I love using because it's so simple to do. So amazingly simple. And yet so powerful.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about goal setting. You say SMART goals don't work, SMART. Can you walk us through the impact goal framework that you have?
Yeah, so a lot of us have heard of SMART goals. They've been around since 1981, which is a long time. I'm afraid to say that some of your listeners maybe weren't even alive when they were invented. I was. But, SMART goals have been around for a long time because they're a great system. It's really simple. Each letter stands for something. But what I was discovering was, as I was teaching women about SMART goals, I was having to adjust it to really work for today's modern woman. And so the new impact goals that I talk about in the book are a little bit of an homage to the SMART goals, and that it's the same and that it's simple to do. Each letter stands for something, but it really allows us to write and create goals for ourselves that are more meaningful. So each letter of impact stands for a word. So the I stands for inspiring. We want our goals to be inspiring, meaning we're writing them as a positive statement. We're writing them as if they've already happened. Not that I want to quit smoking, but I am a non-smoker, right? Really seeing yourself as you want to be. If our goals don't inspire us, why are we doing them, right? If we don't feel like it's a 9 or 10 on a do I want to do it scale, we don't want to do it at all. So we want to start with that I with inspiring. M is measurable. We want our goals to be measurable. Now, we don't want to get fixated on the number. And that's one of the things I notice is a lot of people go, oh, I don't like the way I feel. I need to lose 10 pounds, right? We fixate on the number on the scale. But what if we measured it in a different way? Because really, if we're living on purpose, is the goal to lose 10 pounds or is it really to live a healthy lifestyle, right? So if you want to be active well into your 80s and your 90s, it's not about the 10 pounds. It's really about the healthy lifestyle. So for measurable there, instead of saying I want to lose 10 pounds, what if it is I want to eat healthy? I want to have a healthy meal 3 times a week, right? That's getting you set up with a really great habit, and it's measurable in that you're measuring the frequency of how often it happens. So that's our M, measurable. Right. Then we get to P, purpose-driven. I mean, the book is called On Purpose, so if you didn't think purpose needed to be in there, right? But it's this whole idea that when we tie what we're doing to this longer version of who we want to be and where we want to go, we find that satisfaction when we accomplish the goals. So we want to tie what we're doing to something bigger. Again, it's not about losing the 10 pounds. It's about living a healthy, active lifestyle well into our 80s or 90s. So having it purpose-driven tied to something bigger than just today or even next week. Then our A is adaptable. So I want to talk about adaptable and C, challenging together, because I think those go hand in hand. We want our goals to be challenging and we want them to push them out of our comfort zone. That's really where the growth happens, right? When we get out of our comfort zone. But we don't want them to be so challenging that we don't feel like we can really accomplish them. So we want to have a little bit of flexibility built in. And that's where that adaptability comes in. We want them to be challenging, but we want to give ourselves the grace because, life happens. Right? Life happens. Things are out of our control. Sometimes we get sick kids, we have to travel for work or whatever it is. So let's look at that goal of, not losing 10 pounds, but eating healthy. Okay, that's a challenge if you haven't been eating healthy, right? If you've been stopping at the fast food joint, that's a challenge already. But how can we make it adaptable? Well, we can add in the word average. I will eat healthy an average of 3 times a week. So let's say you have a week where you're traveling, or there's your kids have an event out of town, and you're not able to really prepare the meals. Okay, so that week maybe you only eat healthy twice, or maybe you only eat healthy one time a week. What happens is if your goals are not adaptable, we go, you know what? I fell off the horse. That goal is done. I'm the worst, right? Move on. But if we add that word average in there, we realize, gosh, I only got to eat healthy one time this week. So next week I'm going to shoot for 4, right? Because I want to average of 3 times a week. So you see how that builds in flexibility for life to happen? And then we have our T, which is timed. So we want to have a deadline for our goals. Now, with something like healthy eating, you might think to yourself, well, but don't I want to eat healthy for the rest of my life? You do. But we want to have a deadline where we stop and we check in. A point for us to go, wow, I did really well with that. I need to stop and reward myself. I need to celebrate what I have done. If we don't stop and take that pause, that intentional pause, we forget all the good that we've done. And we don't take that time for ourselves. So let's give ourselves time to celebrate. Or you might look to yourself and go, gosh, you know what? An average of 3 times a week was really hard. I'm going to shift this goal. I'm going to shift it to an average of 2 times a week. I'm going to get myself successful. I'm going to set a new date for this. And then I'll change it to 3 times a week once I've gotten a little bit more momentum. So having that deadline is just a chance for you to check in. Again, it's that intentional pause. So we had inspiring or inspirational, measurable, purpose-driven, adaptable but challenging, and then timed. So you can see how that makes your goals really well-rounded, right?
Yep, I love them all those things. I think they're important, but I think the timed piece is something that is missing in so much of sort of goal setting. It just seems to be this setup to fail. Because there isn't, what you're saying, make it doable, right? An average of makes it doable. So it isn't like if you didn't do it that week, you're not a failure and you didn't fail. Because I think a lot of us are caught up on that, especially if you suffer from perfectionism.
Yes.
It's like you feel like if you don't do it perfect, then you did it terrible, which is not true. And it's the way that you have written it in this book and the way that you're teaching us to do it, it's the long game.
Right.
Because we're connecting the purposefulness in our daily actions to the greater purpose that we're interested in an overarching way. And I do think that is very, it drives behavior in a positive way, at least from a psychological point of view.
Right.
Right? Because it's bigger than this moment, but this moment plus that next moment plus the next time I do this thing, those things add up to the greater purpose that we have. And just bite-size anything seems more manageable than enormous anything, right?
Absolutely. And I think we get really caught up in this idea that if our goals aren't gigantic or they're not so huge that they scare us, then they're not worthwhile. You know, I talk about it in terms of this in the book. We look at where we are today and where we want to go. And the void between those two places, where we are today and where we want to go, is as big as the Grand Canyon. So we think, gosh, I have to do a running jump and I have to somehow jump all the way across there, right? Or we'll spend 20 years building ourselves a jetpack so we can zoom across the chasm. When in truth, if we just chose to put one foot in front of the other, step by step, we could go down the canyon wall, across, and up the other side. You can literally go across the Grand Canyon in a day, right? That's doable. And what's amazing is as you're making that trip, each step is enjoyable. You're stopping, you're enjoying the views. That's the joy in the journey. I think we feel like it's someday when I do X or when Y happens or when I cross this finish line, all of a sudden it's going to be a magical moment and that's when I'm going to be happy. The truth is happiness, joy is in the cracks and the crevices of everyday life. And when we make small actions, itty bitty actions, tiny movements towards that bigger purpose, that bigger vision that we have for ourselves, that's when we have joy. That's when we have happiness. That's when we have that satisfaction at the end of the day because we know that the work that we did had meaning. And that's really powerful.
Right. I love that. All right, last question I have for you. I'm very interested personally about fear. I've written quite a bit about it. I talk quite a bit about it. And you say in the book, you talk about the fact that fear is rooted in 3 stories that we tell ourselves. What are those stories?
It's amazing when you start diving into it. Those 3 stories are, I am unlovable, I am worthless, or I am helpless. And each one of us, one of those stories is the strongest of the three. We all have a little bit of each one, but all the things that we worry about, fear of disappointment, well, that's worrying that people aren't going to love you, right? Or fear of stepping out and doing something new. That's fear of helplessness. Like, well, I can't do that because, right? So when you start to understand that it's just these three little stories that we can start to really dive into, we can use that fifth why to get us started, right? We can start asking ourselves those questions and really listening to those answers about why do I feel like I might be unlovable? Why do I feel like I might be worthless? When we focus in just on these three, it ends up allowing us to let go of the multitude of fears that we experience. And that's a really powerful thing.
It's so interesting, though, because by putting them in the category of the three stories, we are bringing so much of the time fear is unconscious or subconscious. We can act angry, but it's really driven by fear because, fear is one of those emotions that anger is easier to experience for some people, not everybody. Some people are very anti-anger, but then being afraid, right? Because nobody wants to be afraid. When you start to understand that a lot of what is driving behavior is fear. I mean, personally, I used to think I was just ambitious when I was younger. I was like, this is just the way that I am. It's just the way that I'm wired, blah, blah, blah. And then get into therapy and come to find out all those years when I was the talent agent and that I thought I was running towards something. Oh my God, in therapy, and I just figured out I was actually running away from something. Right. I was trying to prove something to my father. There was all these things that was such a revelation. I was like, oh my God, how could that be possible? Because I really believed this story when I started managing that fear and, unpacking it, like you're saying, like seeing what it is. It's like the fifth why, basically. I realized I wanted to do it differently and that I didn't want to be such a workaholic and that working to that degree was just avoiding my life. And this was obviously decades ago, but it was a very revealing type thing. So I really love the whole idea of these just three basic stories because we can all fill in the blank.
Yes. Yeah, we can.
Of the specifics to ourselves, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's that thing. It's, this is what I talk to women about. It's the small, huge movements, simple to implement, easy to manage, yet monumental in the impact it makes. And it starts with asking yourself the questions and really diving into what is it you want? What do you want life to look like? I don't want to be afraid. I don't want to feel unlovable. So then we start diving into that and doing the work. And that's incredibly empowering.
I love it, Tanya. Thank you so much for being here. So tell everyone where they can find you, where they can get your book.
Yes. So the best place to find me is TanyaDalton.com. You can find links to my podcast. You can find links to my books. The books are available anywhere books are sold, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, Target, all of those places. And you can listen to my podcast right here on whatever podcast player you're currently listening to. You can just do a search for The Intentional Advantage or do a search for my name. And I have episodes that I come out with that really help you dive into living your life with intention, living more on purpose.
Well, thank you for spending time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much.